Please subscribe and share for more story. Liora Hayes heard the sound before she processed the pain. A hard, shocking crack rang through her small Austin kitchen as the back of her skull struck the ceramic tile. A burst of white light exploded behind her eyes, spreading down her neck like fire. She slumped sideways, her knees folding against a wall she had painted 30 years earlier, a buttery yellow she used to love. She stared upward in disbelief as Aaron, her only child, towered over her with a face rigid and dark with anger. The boy she once carried against her chest now looked like someone she would fear on the street. His chest rose and fell rapidly, but he said nothing. He only glared as she slid to the floor, her hands shaking. Liora was 67 years old. She never imagined her life would include this moment, her son shoving her so hard she hit her head. Before she could speak, a small voice came from the hallway. A frightened gasp, then a scream. "Daddy, stop." 8-year-old Ivy stood frozen at the doorway, both hands covering her mouth, terror widening her eyes. No child should look at a parent that way. No grandmother should see it at all. Ivy's cry did not bring remorse. Aaron barely turned his head. He simply grunted a low, irritated noise before walking past both of them and pushing through the sliding door into the backyard. Liora refused to melt into tears. She would not hand him that victory. A metallic taste filled her mouth where she had bitten her tongue, and she used the counter to push herself upright, slow, steady, determined. Everything in her body ached, but the cold, hollow space opening behind her ribs was far worse. It was the grief of betrayal, the shock of realizing she was unsafe in the house she built. Through the glass door, she saw Aaron join his wife. Tessa was outside humming lightly, instructing a man who was assembling a large barbecue grill. She was hanging bright party streamers across the gutters of Leora's own home, streamers to celebrate new freedom. Tessa didn't react to the noise inside. She didn't ask about Ivy's scream or Leora's fall. Instead, she greeted Aaron with a wide, triumphant smile and handed him a beer from a cooler resting on Leora's patio. "Perfect timing," Tessa said. "Now we can finally live. This weekend is going to be the party of a lifetime." A party. That word stung deeper than the bruise forming on Leora's back. They were celebrating something ugly, her collapse, her exit, her surrender. But she wasn't surrendered yet. Not publicly. Not loudly. Not while she still had strength in her bones. Liora bypassed the living room, although her eyes flicked briefly toward the gaudy sectional sofa Tessa had bought with Leora's own credit card. The room no longer felt familiar. It felt staged for strangers. She walked straight to the back of the house, to the room she had been pushed into. The master bedroom overlooking the rose bushes once belonged to her and Jonah, her late husband. Now Aaron and Tessa slept there without apology. "We need the space," Tessa had said when Ivy was born. "We need the private bathroom." And Liora, always wanting peace, had agreed, shrinking herself to fit their comfort. She opened the stall-sized room she now called hers. The walls were tight, the air stale from the water heater rattling beside it. She reached for a worn canvas duffel bag she had owned since she moved to Austin decades earlier. It once held dreams of opening a bakery. Today, it would hold evidence that she was leaving her own house. Liora packed with careful, shaking hands. She placed 3 changes of clothes into the duffel, then her blood pressure medication. She hesitated before reaching into the drawer and lifting the thick wool sweater Jonah had given her the Christmas before he died. She pressed it briefly to her chest, letting the fabric steady her breath. 20 years had passed since Jonah's heart stopped in the workshop he loved. Sometimes she told herself Jonah was fortunate never to see his son become this man. She placed the sweater in the bag and reached for a small framed photograph. Jonah's warm eyes and gentle grin looked back at her. "I'm still here, Joe," she whispered. That was when her fingers brushed something stiff and rough. She frowned and pulled out a worn manila envelope containing the original deed to the house, her house. Her name, Liora Hayes, stood alone on the paperwork. Not Aaron. Not Tessa. A cold clarity ripped through the fog of hurt. She hadn't just been shoved. She was being removed from what she legally owned. She slipped the envelope deep inside the bag. Whatever happened next, she was going to need proof. The bedroom door creaked open. Ivy stood there, her face streaked with dried tears. She didn't speak at first. She simply ran to Liora and wrapped small arms around her waist. Her tiny body trembled. "Grandma," she whispered, "don't go. Please don't leave me." Leora's throat tightened. She stroked Ivy's soft curls, careful not to show the ache in her spine. "I'm just going away for a little while," she lied gently. "I'll be back soon." Ivy shook her head. "You're lying," she said in a tiny voice. Children knew the truth before adults admitted it. From the kitchen, Tessa's voice rose, carefree, sharp, and carried by the air. "Yes, she's packing now," Tessa was saying into her phone. "We're doing the barbecue Saturday to celebrate. Invite everyone. We're finally free." Liora froze. A party to celebrate forcing out a 67-year-old widow. A celebration of entitlement. Liora tightened her grip around Ivy. "Sweetheart," she murmured, "nothing that's happening is your fault." Ivy sniffed hard. "I don't want you to go," she repeated. Liora kissed her forehead. "I have to," she said quietly. "And I'm so sorry." Liora swung the duffel bag over her shoulder. It felt heavier than it should, heavy with years, heavy with disappointment. She walked through the living room, taking in the quiet crimes Tessa had committed while hiding behind polite smiles. The warm ivory walls she once painted with Jonah were now a soulless gray. The hardwood floors she and Jonah sanded and sealed were covered with cheap laminate. Her memories had been remodeled out of existence. She reached the sliding glass door. Tessa was outside placing bags of chips on a folding table. When she spotted Liora, she didn't wave, just smiled a thin, victorious smile that said everything without language. "Finally. Get out." Aaron sat in a plastic chair drinking a beer, his back turned to his mother. No goodbye. No question. No shame. Liora didn't look back. She opened the front door and stepped into the blazing Texas sunlight. The heat scorched her face and forced her eyes to squint. She walked the stone path she had laid herself with aching knees decades earlier. She didn't know where she was going, only that staying meant surrender. Across the street, her neighbor Helen was watering azaleas. Helen was kind and steady, a woman who understood quiet suffering. When she saw Liora crossing with a bag slung over her shoulder, her expression shifted from casual curiosity to sharp alarm. "Liora? What happened?" Liora opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Words would have cracked her open. Helen dropped the hose and hurried toward her, water pooling at her shoes. "Come on," Helen insisted softly, taking her by the arm. "Come indoors." Helen guided her into the familiar coolness of her house, a place that smelled of lemon polish, lavender candles, and old books. She sat Liora at the kitchen table and made chamomile tea. The mug shook violently in Leora's hands. But Helen didn't push for explanations. She simply sat close, her quiet presence carrying decades of shared womanhood. Leora's breathing slowed. The betrayal still sat like a weight across her ribs, but at least she was sitting in safety. That night, Liora lay in Helen's guest room staring at the ceiling. The floral quilt, the lavender scent. Everything should have been comforting. Instead, her mind replayed the last 30 years like a cruel documentary. "How did I lose him?" she whispered into the dark. After Jonah died, she had poured everything into Aaron. She worked before sunrise and came home long after dusk, her hands raw from kneading dough at the bakery. She paid every cent of Aaron's college tuition because she didn't want him breaking his back like she and Jonah had. When he met Tessa, Liora ignored the little whisper inside. "She's sharp, she's selfish. She takes more than she gives." Liora silenced herself because Aaron loved her. Love made her agreeable. Love made her small. When Aaron and Tessa asked to move in just for 6 months, she said yes. 6 months became 1 year. Then Ivy was born. They never left. The takeover never came as a single blow. It was a series of tiny cuts. It began with the kitchen. Tessa stood there one afternoon, tapping the countertops with a manicured finger. "This layout is terrible," she complained. "You baked in here?"
How?
She moved Leora's commercial-grade mixer, the one Jonah saved a year to buy, into the garage. In its place, she installed a gleaming espresso machine. Then came the furniture. "This oak table is too heavy and old," she said dismissively. Liora bit her tongue as strangers hauled out the table Jonah built with his own hands. The day Liora returned from the grocery store to find her bedroom boxed up and moved to the back of the house, Aaron didn't even look apologetic. "We just need the suite," he muttered. "We're growing. We need space." Liora had stared at him. "It is my house, Aaron." He shrugged. "And you're lucky we're here. You shouldn't be alone." She wanted to shout, but silence seemed easier than war. Helen's kindness became a soft landing for Liora. She gave her privacy, food, and stillness. But on the third day, Helen walked in from her backyard carrying her phone. Her lips were pressed tight with anger. "Liora, you need to see this." She handed her the phone. On the screen was a photograph of Leora's backyard. Tables full of food, cups everywhere, a new grill smoking, strangers laughing. Leora's jaw clenched. Helen swiped again. A video. Music pounded through speakers. Tessa stood on a patio chair, holding a wine glass high. "To freedom," she shouted. "She's finally gone. This house is ours." A chorus of cheers answered. Liora felt something unfamiliar move through her, something cold, sharp, and stabilizing. There were no more tears. Only clarity. Helen whispered, "How long has this been happening?" Liora stared out the window at the house across the street. "Since 10 this morning," Helen said. "It's almost 3. Liora stood slowly. "I made a mistake." Helen frowned. "What mistake?" Leora's voice hardened. "Running away. I left like I was guilty. I left like a thief." She walked to the window, looking at her own house, her lawn, her stones, her roses. "They are celebrating assault," she said quietly. "They stole money. They forged my name. And they're hosting a party on my property." Helen watched her carefully. "What will you do?" Liora lifted her chin. "Get my house back." Helen blinked at the sudden steel in her voice. "But how?" Liora reached for her duffel and pulled out the envelope. She laid the property deed on Helen's kitchen table. "Because they don't have this." Helen stared, then let out a slow breath. "You need a lawyer, someone who bites." Liora nodded. "Do you know one?" Helen's expression sharpened into a determined smile. "As a matter of fact, I do." Helen drove Liora downtown to meet attorney Dana Ortiz, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s with a voice that didn't tremble for anyone. In her office, Dana listened as Liora spoke, not emotionally, not shakily, just plainly. She summarized 3 decades of sacrifice, slow erasure, exploitation, forged signatures, and finally the shove that sent her skull to the tile. She handed over bank statements. She handed over the deed. Helen showed Dana the video of Tessa's toast. Dana remained silent for several seconds. Then she leaned forward. "Mrs. Hayes, this isn't a family disagreement," she said. "This is elder abuse, fraud, identity theft, and illegal dispossession." Liora exhaled in relief and disbelief. "What can we do?" Dana straightened. "We can do a lot. But listen carefully. You will be accusing your son of crimes. Are you prepared?" Liora pictured Aaron's purple-faced rage and Ivy's terrified scream. "Yes," she said softly. "Completely." Dana picked up her office phone. "They are currently trespassing," she said. "They are on your property, without legal consent. The assault gives us grounds for emergency removal. Give any evidence. I can probably get a judge to sign it today." Liora blinked. "Today?" Dana nodded. "They planned a party. Let's not disappoint the guests." For the next 2 hours, Dana worked like a storm, writing affidavits, calling a judge she trusted, coordinating with the local police precinct. She even notified child services, making it clear a minor was present in a home where violence and illegal eviction occurred. "Ivy's safety will be monitored," she said firmly. At 6 o'clock, they drove back to Leora Street. Police cruisers were already there, lights off. Dana spoke with 2 officers. Another unmarked car arrived, Child Protective Services. Liora sat in Helen's passenger seat, breathing hard. "Ready?" Helen asked. Liora nodded slowly. "Ready." Liora stepped out of the car, her legs shaky with adrenaline. Officer Bennett approached her. "Ma'am, confirm for the record. Is this your home, and do the individuals inside have your permission to be here?" Liora stared at the house she and Jonah built. "This is my home. They do not have my permission." Bennett nodded. "You'll stand with your attorney. We'll make contact." He knocked hard on the door. The music inside lowered. Aaron opened it, beer in hand, expecting a neighbor. His face dropped when he saw badges. Can I help you?" Dana stepped forward. "Mr. Wilson, his new name now. I'm attorney Dana Ortiz. You're being served with an emergency eviction order signed by Judge Alpert. You and your guests must vacate the premises immediately." Aaron blinked. "What? That's insane. This is my house." He finally saw Liora over Dana's shoulder. "Mom? What did you do?" Liora didn't look away. Tessa shoved forward. "This is ridiculous. She has no authority here. This is our home now." Officer Bennett kept his tone flat. "This property is registered to Mrs. Liora Hayes. You have 30 minutes to collect essential belongings. You may schedule an officer-supervised visit for the rest." Tessa's voice shot up. 30 minutes? We live here." Dana cut in. "The order is supported by proof of a forged $5,000 loan and a report of physical assault." Tessa went pale. Guests drifted toward the side gate, whispering. The moment police appeared, loyalty evaporated. Within minutes, the party was a ghost scene. Aaron's shoulders fell. He looked small, smaller than Liora ever remembered. Ivy stepped out from the hall, confused and frightened. When she spotted Liora, she ran. "Grandma!" She threw her arms around her. Liora held her tight. "It's all right," she whispered. "You're safe." Child Services approached gently. Aaron deflated further. Tessa muttered curses under her breath while stuffing clothes into bags. For 30 minutes, Liora watched quietly. Not weak, not frightened, simply present. Retrieving what was hers. The chaos inside the house turned bitter. Tessa flung shoes into a trash bag while cursing at everyone in reach. "This isn't finished," she shouted. "You'll regret this, you old." Dana raised a hand calmly. "Any threats will be logged and attached to your case, Ms. Wilson." Aaron stood silently near the doorway, stuffing shirts into a backpack. The anger had drained out of him, leaving something pathetic and hollow. He didn't look at his mother. The CPS worker, Miss Carter, knelt beside Ivy and said softly, "Your parents have to leave tonight, but we're going to make sure you're safe. You're not in trouble." Ivy nodded through shaky breaths. She hugged Liora around the waist. "Do you have to leave again?" Liora stroked her hair. "Not tonight. I'm right here." Aaron finally spoke, his voice low. "Mom, you didn't have to do all this." Liora looked him in the eye. "You shoved me. You forged my name. You tried to take my home." Aaron looked away. "We needed money," he muttered. "You should have helped us." Liora felt exhaustion deepen in her bones. "I helped you for 30 years, she answered. "You decided it wasn't enough." By the 30th minute, Officer Bennett called. "Time's up." Tessa stormed toward the door, dragging 2 stuffed bags. "This is temporary," she snapped at Liora. "You'll see. A judge will give us everything." Dana replied smoothly, "You have no legal claim. Walk away." Aaron came last, shoulders hunched, backpack half-zipped. He paused in front of Liora, searching her face for something, anger, guilt, softness. But she offered him nothing. His voice finally cracked. "Where are we supposed to go?" Liora inhaled slowly. "I figured out where to go when you forced me out. You can do the same." The officers escorted them to the driveway. Miss Carter ensured Ivy would stay with Aaron temporarily, but under monitoring, with follow-up assessments. Ivy reached for Liora again, panicked. "I don't want to go with them." Liora kneeled, gripping Ivy's arms gently. "You'll see me soon," she whispered. "And there are people watching to keep you safe." Aaron opened the car door. Ivy sobbed quietly as she was buckled in. Aaron didn't look back as he drove away. The car turned the corner and disappeared. Silence swept the street. The guests were gone. The patrol cars pulled away. Dana handed Liora her business card. Call me tomorrow. We'll start official filings, fraud charges, property protection, and a restraining component if needed. Miss Carter did the same. I'll be in touch about Ivy. You did the right thing. Liora nodded, though her chest ached in a way she couldn't describe. Helen touched her shoulder. Do you want me to stay with you tonight? Liora shook her head.
No.
I need to do this alone. Helen hugged her. You are the strongest woman I've ever met, Liora Hayes. When Helen left, Liora stood at the threshold of her home alone. The door was wide open. She stepped inside. The place was a wreck. Plastic cups, spilled drinks, sticky countertops, trash on the floor. But it was her wreck. Her house. She walked to the backyard. Tattered streamers fluttered along the gutter. Liora grabbed a trash bag and started pulling them down one by one. She didn't cry. She didn't rage. She simply worked. Inside, she cleared the tables, wiped sticky beer from the counters, and gathered every last plastic cup. Each small, ordinary motion felt like reclaiming breath. Then she walked to the primary bedroom, the one Tessa had stolen. Clothes littered the carpet. Makeup smudged the top of the vanity. Liora stared at it for a moment, then grabbed more trash bags. She emptied the drawers, cleared the shelves, and piled every item by the front door. Tomorrow they could collect these things under supervision, but not tonight. She removed the leopard print sheets from the bed and tossed them aside. She found her old cotton linens in the hallway closet. Smooth, simple, familiar. She fitted them over her mattress in silence. Then she returned to the tiny room near the water heater, the one where she'd been pushed like an afterthought, and packed what was left of her belongings. She carried a framed photo of Jonah back into the primary bedroom and set it on the nightstand. I'm home, Jonah, she said. The words were so quiet they barely existed. But she meant every syllable. It was nearly midnight before the house was clean. Liora finally sat in her favorite armchair, the one Tessa had shoved into a corner months ago. She dragged it back to the bay window. Outside, the street was still. The house was silent. The silence didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Liora leaned back in the chair and closed her eyes. She thought of Aaron as a little boy, quiet, bookish, proud of spelling tests. She remembered Jonah lifting that boy onto his shoulders. She remembered believing that love was enough to shape a good man. Somewhere along the way, Aaron learned entitlement instead of love, possession instead of gratitude. Liora exhaled. You're still my son, she whispered into the quiet. But I won't let you destroy me. The house felt lighter, like the walls were finally breathing again. Liora stayed in that chair for a long time, letting the stillness soak into her bones. The next morning, she woke early. Dawn poured soft light across the floors. Liora dialed a locksmith and had every exterior lock changed. All new keys, she told the technician, and reinforced the back door. He nodded, no questions asked. When he finished, she brought out 2 bags filled with Tessa's leftover belongings. She placed them near the garage, ready for police-supervised pickup. Then she brewed coffee in the kitchen that used to smell of fresh bread, and cinnamon rolls from the bakery Jonah helped her build. She sat again in her reclaimed armchair and watched. Sunlight slide across her roses. For the first time in a long while, she didn't feel like a visitor in her own skin. Her phone buzzed. A text from Helen. Checking on you.
Proud of you.
Liora typed back. Thank you. I'm okay. The second message surprised her.
She meant it.
A stronger vibration came a minute later, a voicemail from Dana. Paperwork has been filed. Police log is active. You're protected. I'll call again this afternoon. Another text from Miss Carter. We'll be scheduling interviews regarding Ivy. You are listed as a safe relative. Liora held her breath, then let relief wash through her. She didn't know where Aaron or Tessa slept the night before. A motel. A friend's couch. Somewhere loud and temporary. But she didn't wish them suffering. She only wished them distance. Liora stepped into the garage. Her professional mixer was still pushed into a corner, covered with a sheet. She touched the metal housing, remembering Jonah's grin the day he bought it. "Make something sweet," he had said. Liora smiled at the memory. She plugged it in. The lights flicked on, steady and bright. She pulled flour from the pantry and began kneading dough. The rhythm grounded her. Press, fold, turn. The house warmed with the smell of rising yeast. For the first time in months, she hummed. She wasn't baking for customers. She wasn't baking for Aaron. She was baking for herself. When the first loaf came out golden, she set it on the counter to cool. After lunch, she walked through the house slowly, taking inventory. The gray walls could be repainted. The laminate could be peeled up. Jonah's wood floors might still survive. She would rebuild piece by piece, not rushed, not desperate, just steady. She stood in the doorway that once held Ivy's height chart. The penciled lines were still there, faint but present. Liora traced them with her finger. "You'll come back," she whispered. She didn't know what the court would decide. She didn't know what Aaron would do next. But she knew something about herself now. She was not disposable. She was not helpless. And she was not done. That night, she sat once more in her armchair as the sun disappeared behind the roofs of her quiet street. The house was finally calm. No shouting, no demands, no footsteps storming through halls she built with love. Liora folded her hands in her lap and breathed deeply. She had lost her son. Not yesterday, but slowly, over years of self-erasure. But she found something back, herself. "A home is not a trophy," she murmured. "A mother is not a servant." She thought of Ivy's teary eyes and small arms wrapped tight around her waist. She thought of the judge, the filings, the truth that now lived on paper. There were battles ahead.